Okay, so for today's topic, the news came out either today or yesterday that Adobe was ending support for Flash in 2020. Browsers have been kind of phasing it out already, but there were ways to make it run. It's mainly because there's a lot of security issues with Flash, so they've been slowly phasing it out. But I think this has a big impact on Flash games that have basically been on the internet ever since I could remember, I guess. So seeing all those kind of just disappear is kind of a shame, even though none of them really stuck around like they were classic games that we're so fond of on NES and Super Nintendo and all that. I don't know. I kind of have nostalgia in general for Flash games. What about you guys?
Yeah, I mean, definitely Flash games were huge, in the early days of the internet. Like every game was Flash based for the most part. And then even just like videos in general, like when people started getting into uploading short form videos that they made, I mean, Flash was always the home for all of that too. Back in the late 90s, early 2000s, and even up through, I mean, I can remember going to like Flash websites and playing tons of games like 2006 and stuff even.
What was your go-to site?
I can't even remember. It was whatever one hosted Funky Truck. You guys ever play Funky Truck?
I think I did, actually.
It's sort of like Trials, but with like a stupid truck, like a big jacked up monster truck. And there was like 4 of them. And there was a site that hosted all of those. And there was like a bunch of other great games that I would just play in class in college on my web browser when I was supposed to be listening to a lecture.
It's probably the same one that I always went to, too. I can't think of what it was called, though, but yeah, I'm pretty sure that was a game that I played, too. So many games, thinking back, that you played that, they weren't great games by any means, but
right.
Like, it was a good time waster. Good, you find a website that has, hundreds of games, scroll through, click one, play it for a little bit. Just so much fun for a short period of time. All that's gone.
Yeah. The one I remember fondly was Newgrounds.
I bet that was the one I'm thinking of.
It was kind of like green and black, and it had like a tank for the logo.
Yep.
Yeah.
I bet that's it.
Yeah, that one was a lot of fun. Had a lot of cool games on there.
Yeah, there was just I'm looking at Newgrounds now. I bet if this wasn't the one that I was going to all the time, it was one that I went to quite a bit. Just the layout looks somewhat familiar even still now. One thing I distinctly remember was in college we'd get like 4 or 5 of us sitting in a row in class again when we're supposed to be learning. And there was like this Adobe Flash version of like Pictionary. So then we would all just share what the answer was, and then we would just take turns. It was like an 8-room lobby, so we'd have half of it, and then we would just draw horrible shit on the screen with all these like random people, just like people taking craps on people and nude women. And then, in the last 5 seconds, somebody would punch in the answer because we just sent it to them through Messenger. It was pretty entertaining. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. Huh.
And super immature.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if there's gonna be some community that's gonna pick this up though, right? And like do like a database and like keep these things going somehow.
Yeah, I mean, in the last probably 5 years, there's been ways to kind of port it over to there's new web platforms like WebGL, and there's another one out there, I forget what it's called. So I'm sure that's part of it, but if you don't own the source code, that's tough to do. And, a lot of those people made them back when they were in school, or, they haven't even thought about those Flash games that they made.
Sure.
In forever, so... And there wasn't really a way to just like for code management online back then real well. So I'm sure they're lost to time, a lot of it.
Yeah, it's kind of a bummer. It was such a key piece of, the internet becoming what it's become today. I mean, to see it go away altogether or be phased out is kind of crazy. I mean, you'd still be able to, in theory, run these games if you could install... You'd think someone's going to have like torrents out there of like old versions of Flash, right? That you'd be able to, if you so desired, to be able to get these things to work? Or do you think that you just won't be able to find the games, period? So
You'd be able to load them up in the Flash program itself, like what you make Flash games in, maybe. That might work if you have the code.
just not through your browser? Because I suppose the browser wouldn't be able to like interact with the Flash add-in or plug-in, right?
Right. At some point, the browser's just going to deny that, I think, altogether.
Wouldn't that be just in like newer updates too? So if you have a computer that's older and haven't updated,
Yeah, that's
your
true.
browser is still gonna have it. So
Sure, especially like Windows, like IE, older IE.
yeah,
Now all browsers kind of self-update themselves, so...
So now you're going to need to like run like a browser, like a windowed browser inside of a partitioned like Windows 98 computer or something stupid. Further go down the rabbit hole that is trying to PC retro game.
This is my Flash machine.
Now that we're talking about it, I kind of want to do that. It sounds amazing. What? You've never played Funky Truck? Well, you haven't lived.
It's like Trials, a way better game that's much more modern, but play this one.
Yeah, it runs at 10 FPS. It's great. Yeah. Well, that was always the thing with Flash games, is like Flash games were only ever good when they were at their simplest, like 2 input buttons. Like if you got anything more than like forward, backwards, and like a jump button, it kind of went to hell most of the time.
Yep, most likely because it was very dependent on the computer's performance, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, and a lot of that could vary quite a bit in those early years. One thing is, like Justin was saying, like you just go through and just boot through them, click one, go to the next one. Wonder if that's what it's like for people who use like emulators quite a bit for older games. Like don't have any nostalgia for it, never grew up with it, but they have an emulator full of all the NES games. Do you just kind of do the same thing? You know?
Yeah.
yeah. I would assume that's same situation. I was actually just talking to a guy at work because he was talking about how he just got RetroPie, I guess, with a ton of games. And I was like, well, which game are you most excited about? He's like, I don't know, I'm just going to cycle through them all. I was like, okay.
Yeah, then you never really get to experience anything. Right?
Yeah, you play for a minute. You don't really get what the game is even.
Well, that's kind of why when I hacked my NES Classic, I never did like the second revision where you could you put the entire library on there. Because I was like, by the time I'm getting to the point where I can get 80 games on here, if I go beyond that, I'm just going to spend all my time like trying everything out. I'm never going to actually get into the meat of anything. So I think that is a problem with like emulation in that regard, where it's just sensory overload.
Sure.
It was kind of neat though, because I guess he's giving it to his grandson or something, or
Oh yeah,
kid or something. So at least his kid can, try some of the fun games.
Huh.
A lot of kids probably miss out on because their parents don't care.
yeah. Where if you're Andy or I, you go to a store and your kid's like, "Daddy, let's get that game," and your answer is always, "We already have it." Which is probably the the wrong end of the spectrum to be on, I guess.
It's definitely doesn't make much financial sense.
This is true. Yeah, I had a contractor over here to look at putting in an egress window in like what's left of my game room. I think he was kind of horrified that, a middle-aged man had like all these amiibos and like video games just piled up in this room. He's like, "Gaming room, huh?" I was like, "Yeah, it used to be." And he's like, "Oh, I bet you don't have much time for that with kids anymore." I'm like, "Yeah, I guess." So any last closing thoughts on Flash disappearing?
Not really.
Yeah.
R.I.P.
It's been fun.
It's much better options now.
There'll probably be a news story in the next 2 weeks that Flash hung itself in a hotel room somewhere.
And then there'll be a conspiracy theory that Unity killed it.